welcome to The Vector, where we discuss topics, trends, and insights driving the global space ecosystem. I am your host, Kelli Kedis Ogborn, Vice President of Space Commerce and Entrepreneurship at Space Foundation, and today I am joined by Meredith Reeves, who is the Technology Transfer Expansion Lead at NASA's Kennedy Space Center within their Technology Transfer Program. Meredith is passionate about helping entrepreneurs realize the full potential of NASA technologies to create real impact outside of NASA's intended use cases. Meredith has a long-standing track record in leadership and service to the community through various roles at NASA, as well as a FEMA volunteer for recovery efforts during Hurricane Katrina. She joined NASA in 2004 and has led teams as a contracting officer, was a new technology representative for the Technology Transfer Program, and now at Kennedy Space Center's Technology Transfer Expansion Program, which really aims at connecting NASA's technologies to entrepreneurs for licensing opportunities. Meredith, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like this program within NASA is not often known, although it has such tremendous impact and opportunity for entrepreneurs. And what I find so fascinating about it is that the infrastructure of space and the technologies developed for space really act as this invisible backbone for goods and services utilized every day. And in fact, as you know, a lot of space spinoffs have been so seamlessly integrated into our lives that we often forget that we have NASA to thank for them. And for some of our viewers, I'll just touch on a bit of the dual use technologies that I think are really interesting. One is baby food. So baby food actually contains nutritionally enriched ingredients that were initially devised for NASA. And memory foam, was developed as customized seats for astronauts to help alleviate the pressure and effects of G-force during takeoff and landing. And another one that people generally don't realize is that the Black & Decker Dust Buster. So before it actually came into our lives, it was originally designed as a lunar rock drill. And then subsequently, the company then created a bunch of different domestic battery-powered handheld devices. And so when you start to peel back the onion, you realize that a lot of the initial investment core technology that NASA has really developed has created so many other avenues for growth and opportunity for companies. And I just think it's really fascinating when you realize the origin of it.
Yeah, that's really true. And the intent of the development is for space, obviously, and that if we do see potential outside of NASA, we want it to be used to the maximum benefit, just like those things that you mentioned. So a lot of these things that are being developed and even things in the past that were developed that we thought might not be applicable outside of NASA are now becoming more available even because of commercial space applications.
Absolutely. So for some of our viewers who may not know much about the tech transfer program and especially what you do, could you tell us a little bit about what it is and how people can utilize it?
Of course. Yeah. So tech transfer, the program, and it is NASA wide. I'm at Kennedy Space Center, and every center works on this as well. It supports tech transfer, ensures that the innovations being developed by NASA are broadly available to the public and maximizing the benefit to the nation because it was taxpayer dollars that funded that to begin with, and we do want maximum benefit of that. And the successes from that do show up in the spinoffs, like you said. And so what our office and all the offices across at all the centers do is we work with the inventors and innovators at our centers and understand what they are working on. Sometimes it's years and years of development. Sometimes it's a quick solution that they're working on. In the past, there was a lot of solutions related to the shuttle program. So that's where a lot of things came from at KSC. And more recently, we've got a lot of different kind of R&T development for different kind of ground system solutions. And so when we do understand what they're working on and we can look out to see how that might be beneficial in other applications and industries, then NASA goes through the patent process and getting that patented. And even before that, or even maybe without a patent, we are able to transfer technologies to let other people have access to what that innovation is all about. And so when somebody expresses interest, they can find those different technologies on our website, which you'll see technology.nasa.gov, and explore, what they might be able to do. And if they think it's a viable solution for them to be built upon, they can license the technology and then decide, and then move forward with their own development.
It's such a wonderful pathway and an avenue for entrepreneurs because there's a lot of people that want to get into the business of space, but they might not have a core competency to develop a technology from scratch for itself. So being able to actually utilize what's already been developed at the brain trust of NASA, and as you mentioned, like taxpayer dollars that de-risk a lot of the basic science to get something to a point of fruition, and then really just build it up from a business aspect is I think a really good strategy and pathway for people. Is there generally a certain type of archetype of company or entrepreneur that would best be suited for the tech transfer program? So could you walk me through if somebody just wakes up and is like, I want to see what NASA has to offer, how would they, one, figure out what's there? I know you mentioned the website, but then also understand if they actually have what it takes to develop it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's very broad. I think there's anybody, anywhere from entrepreneurs to very developed businesses that may be looking for solutions. And so also the portfolio is pretty broad as far as the topics. So if you do visit this site, you'll see, I think there's 15 different categories, including communications, medicine, aerospace, materials and coating, sensors, software, robotics. And so if you think about all of those things, plus the many more that I didn't list, that's really across the board things that can be used all over the place, and that might be applicable to things in agriculture. We'll talk a little bit more about those kinds of things. We do a lot of plant science here at KSC for space applications, and so a lot of those things can be transferable. And so I think the customers for these technologies are really anyone, and the technology transfer expansion program within Tech Transfer is really focusing on trying to make sure that entrepreneurs and startups are aware of this patent portfolio and how to access it and what they can do to get a startup license.
What does that process look like? So I'm just thinking of, I guess this is a bit of a two-part question. So one, you mentioned that there's a broad portfolio of the different types of technologies, and I imagine that some might be more mature than others. So if a company came in and went through the process of licensing, what generally is the level of development that's necessary on the back end for them to get it to be a product that they can use?
Yeah, good point. I guess that depends what they plan to do with it. And so if somebody does come in and they have an idea that something in the portfolio will help them through the process of licensing, they will have to build that plan and communicate that with NASA before it actually goes through all the process, so that we understand what their intent is on using it. And so, somebody might be getting a technology as their starting point, right? Or you might just be getting a little piece of something like a cell phone camera, right? To go into a cell phone. It's not your final product, it's a piece of it. And so depending on what that development is and how you need it, it could be kind of this is how it is and this is how we're going to use it. Or you might have to do a whole lot to get it to work the way you want it for your own application.
Got it. But the license process, I guess, with NASA, they do have to show that business plan and how they plan to commercialize it, what they plan to utilize it for. And then is there a time horizon on the license, or how does that work?
I'm not too sure on the time horizons on the licenses. But we can look into that. But there are a few different kinds of licenses, and they all have different kind of timelines for when things should happen and when they need to happen by. And so NASA will do checks back and forth, to see how things are going, and then if there are commercial sales, we want to know about that too.
Yeah. What are some of the areas that are available for license that might surprise people? And the reason I say that is, as I mentioned beginning, and you've said, like, space really does touch everything, and it can be utilized in a lot of different ways. But most people think about it in terms of very particular verticals of launch and satellites and others. So could you touch upon some of the areas that may shock people, and also they might not realize there is an opportunity in those areas?
Sure. I did mention the plants. I feel like that probably isn't an obvious topic for, Kennedy Space Center launching rockets. So, we do have plant science labs here at KC and all the technologies around that being developed. And so One of the examples we have of a patent pending technology that's out there is in the mechanical and fluid system. So we talked about the different categories on the website, and this is a miniaturized electrospray system, and it's for precision applications. So in the real world, outside of NASA, we do have electrostatic spray systems for different applications, but they're not precision. So in for space, we really needed it to be more of a precision application. And so this is something that electrostatically charges and delivers liquids to grounded targets. And like I said, those do exist on a bigger scale. This is kind of like the miniaturized version of that. And so it was developed for in-space aeroponic food production applications. It doesn't use air. It uses a lot less liquid. It's a concentrated mist. So saving on a lot of resources there. It sprays at a much shorter distance, closer to 2 feet. And some of the potential applications outside of NASA could be for like topical medications, antimicrobial coatings. So it was kind of a little bit of a topic, maybe more than a little bit, whenever COVID was happening.
Yeah.
And so paint and disinfectants, agricultural applications. And so we've had interest in that from people trying to get more of a refined, I guess, process for spraying.
That's interesting. Is there an opportunity if someone licenses this technology as an ongoing relationship to potentially have NASA as like a feedback loop for development questions, or is it mainly the technology gets licensed and then there's obviously a check-in to see if they're successful, but what about the kind of
so and that's kind of the bridge that we have as the tech transfer office, is we can communicate those things. And so there really is not, you're not getting access to the actual inventors necessarily who do these things, but that's kind of what our office does, is to be the connection back to NASA if there are any questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a really smart entrepreneurial strategy, because a lot of times, I mentioned in the beginning that some people want to get into space and they don't know how, but even if if a company has a basic technology that can be enhanced by something that NASA has to create a better product, right? As opposed to starting from scratch, but being able to utilize something that exists. It's definitely worth exploring, because there's the credibility and the legacy that comes from NASA technology, and being able to leverage that, I think, is a really smart way. So when you work with entrepreneurs, how do you help them think about the utilization of NASA technology and how they can best adopt it into their business practice?
Yeah, and that's a newer thing within NASA to be targeting, some of these things towards entrepreneurs. But I think obviously depending on what industry they're in, but if we're talking space, if people are trying to have a certain solution, then you can match it. So I think it can go, both ways. If you're looking just to start something and you're trying to be interested in a certain area, you can probably go to portfolio and search around. But I think probably more likely you have a solution in mind and maybe you're looking for enhancements. And so, just helping people navigate into what the solutions might be, maybe understanding the capabilities of some of these things beyond what NASA was using them for.
Have there been any success stories or companies that you've worked with that have surprised you in a way that, they've utilized the technology in really creative ways, or they've just been able to license the technology and be really successful with it?
Yeah. So I can go back. I can go into another spinoff. So and maybe talk about spinoffs for a second, just before that. And so the spinoffs are kind of the end result of this whole tech transfer process. Somebody develops a technology here, we patent it, somebody licenses it, puts it into their business plan, develops a product and sells it, and makes the world better, right? And so and if you want to see those spinoffs, again, they're on our website. If you go to technology.nasa.gov, you'll see them, and there's tons. There's some new ones out. The new spinoff 2023 just came out, so you can see those on the site too. And one of our older ones, which came out a long time ago, actually ends up being an expired patent now, which is not a bad thing. But a long time ago here at KSC, when they were aiming to clean rocket parts with solvents, and the solvents got into the soil and they had to figure out how to clean that up, some solutions were developed. And so it's called sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. I don't want to forget, it was emulsified zero valent iron. So if you look that up, EZVI is on the website, and you can read about that. But they found a way to clean these contaminants out of the ground, and so that was definitely appealing to people outside of NASA, as cleanup sites were becoming more of a thing, and trying to clean up the ground. And so I think that that's kind of a surprising one, because I really don't think that that was probably something that people would think that would come out of Kennedy Space Center. But
Mhm.
it's a really good story, and it's an eco-friendly cleanup solution, and it can decontaminate sand and soil, bedrock, and groundwater. It's been used around the world at this point, and one of the early examples of using that was in the early 80s. There was a train derailment in Louisiana, and the toxic chemicals, soaked into the ground. They spent years and years, I think it said 30 or so, trying to use well-known techniques to clean up the ground, but the chemicals still remained, and they couldn't get it to a safe level. And this was actually ended up being their solution all the way up to 2013, when they decided to implement EZVI.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's always those interesting solutions. I'm never disappointed by the ingenuity of people to figure out how to use something. I remember years ago when I was talking about different spinoffs. I didn't mention this as an example in the beginning, but I just find that it's fascinating that invisible braces actually came out of NASA's Advanced Ceramics Research Program, and I think that the property in particular was initially used as like an infrared radome detection, and they found that the property was strong enough and clear enough that it could do that. But then from the dental practice, they wanted something that could actually withstand whatever braces need to do, but that you couldn't see. And so it
Yeah.
was a very interesting secondary effect to something that initially had no business being in anyone's mouth that they
Yeah.
use it. As a strategy, so thinking about the end state of a spinoff and where the actual technology IP lies, I guess you could approach it two different ways. So an entrepreneur or just a company could think about an end result of what they eventually want to put into the market, and then go and see if there's a technology as a basic component that could be utilized. Or I guess they could see what's available and then try to think of an end state. Have you seen one strategy being more effective than another?
I'm not sure I have specific examples. I do feel like it's probably easier to implement a solution that we have into something that's already being developed. Um, Unless it's kind of like a complete package, like the EZVI was, where this was a better developed, like ready to go kind of technology. Like you said, and we've talked about, some of these things are a lot smaller. They might be a component of something that to be added on. But I don't have any specific examples of that. But I tend to believe that it's probably more likely to be implemented into a solution that's already being worked.
Yeah. And what does your day-to-day look like working with the community? Like, what kind of companies have you talked to? What kind of individuals? I'm sure there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around it, but what does that engagement look like for you?
Yeah, good question. So, I've been in this position just over a year, and it has been different trying to get out and get out of the NASA bubble, and spread the word about things. It's not something new that NASA's been doing, but kind of getting more into these ecosystems of startups and entrepreneurs, getting involved with organizations across Florida mainly, but also across the country. And so it is exciting. We were at Space Day down in Fort Lauderdale, and that's where we made a lot of great new connections there. And just it's really cool to see what other people are working on, honestly, because we do cool stuff here, but we do get kind of drowned in our own stuff. So it's great to get outside and also understand how our technologies may be used by other people, and see them get excited about it.
That is actually one of I think the more fun things about the space ecosystem is that it is becoming more and more broad by the day. So while, us in the traditional space industry, we very much work in these silos, it's the excitement and ingenuity and creativity of this next wave that I think is really driving where we're going forward. Just based on your assessment and what you've seen, what gets you the most excited about the future of space? So this can be from a groundswell of new capabilities that you've seen, or things that are coming down the pike from NASA, but what energizes you?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot there, but I do think being more exposed, like to organizations like yours and to people working on like the next stage of space stuff, right? And so we went from, when I started working here, we were still launching shuttle, and so it was very kind of routine. And then there was this vision for commercial space that seemed so out there, at the time when it came out,
Mhm.
and now we're here. And so it's really, really great to see what people's solutions are, or what do we need for that, right? What do we need to get there, and what are people envisioning um, that like arena to be in the next, however many years.
Yeah, I think that's really energized the community, especially with the successful demonstration of Artemis, the
Right.
launch. You're realizing more and more that the opportunities in low Earth orbit, whether it's a lunar outpost or at the commercial space stations, or even existing on the ISS now, are going to be somewhat near in our lifespan, right? We're no longer talking about 50-year out programs. It's within 5, 10 years. And so I think that the creative process of how to utilize the conditions of space and what technologies are necessary to expand space are really on the forefront of people's minds. And they can approach it from a more practical business place, as opposed to just like,
Right.
oh, we're going to Mars, we're going to, drill on asteroids, which will happen at some point, but that still
Yeah.
feels like the things of science fiction novels.
Right. And that's where we see a lot of the stuff, right? Is you see a lot of these movies, and now we're like, you watch it and you're like, well, maybe that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Potatoes on Mars might not be that far off. So
That is true. I think that going back to your piece about the plant growth, that is one of these areas that is going to be really critical, because once we technologically prove the possibility of going back to the moon and having these outposts, which Artemis wants to do, it's the sustainment of life, both from a living aspect, nutrient aspect, mental health aspect, activity, all of it. The next wave, I think, is going to be really, really fascinating, because it's going to encompass just so much more than we think of the current space industry.
yeah, and in some ways I feel like we have so long to go, but time flies, so we'll see. But we're just trying to figure out the best ways to get there most efficiently. Where's the water? What can we do
Yeah.
with it? We got to be able to live if we're up there. So, NASA's working on a lot of that kind of stuff. Like I said, like trying to find where the water is. So, it'll be really interesting to see how far that goes and how quickly it gets there.
So you mentioned that each NASA facility has their own tech transfer program. And obviously each NASA center focuses on something slightly different. Um, is the technology on the website then siloed based on what's available at Kennedy versus what's available, or is it more just topical that that entrepreneurs or companies can start there and then go down?
Yeah, both. So you can, if you go to the website, you'll see the list of the areas, but you can also search by center. So if something came from Kennedy, or you're just interested in technologies that came out of JSC or whatever center you're looking at, you can filter the website by center or by area. So if you want to just look at materials and coatings, you can go look at materials and coatings. That'll bring up everything across the agency. So the tech transfer program works as an agency program, and we
Okay.
all pretty much function similarly across the agency.
So an entrepreneur or a company doesn't necessarily have to be, like, if they want a license from Kennedy, they don't have to be in Florida.
Oh, no. It's yeah. So it's the same license process for the agency.
Okay.
It'll just be directed to the center that kind of owns that technology.
And do you work with international partners, or if there's a foreign company that wants to license? I know there's certain restrictions about how foreign companies can do business with NASA, but is it just open to U.S. citizens, or is it more global?
It's more strictly to the United States, but there may be some international, but I'll admit I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I know there's parameters in terms of a company needing to be 51% U.S. owned, or something of
Right.
that nature. We do have some foreign viewers, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, and there have been technology. I mean, I know that there's technologies that have been used, once they've been licensed, and maybe there are sales across borders, but whether that's licensed outside of the country, I'm not sure.
Okay. What have we touched upon that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure that gets known?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I would just really encourage people to check out what's out there, learn more about the spinoffs and how things have kind of been, implemented into our daily lives that have come from NASA. And if you have any questions on it, that's what we're here for. You can find our information on our websites, on technology.nasa.gov. You should be able to get to the different centers and the contacts on there. And if you're interested in something, and going and reading about it, you can look up the NASA patents. Also, if you want to get more deeply into that information, that's publicly available also.
That's great. No, I appreciate you coming on, because NASA is such a fascinating agency, because I would almost say that they're probably one of the top 5 most recognizable brands in the world. Right? Everybody knows the NASA logo, or I think you guys call it the
Yeah.
meatball. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
But it can be such an intimidating agency to individuals because of its stature and history and posturing. But knowing that this exists as an opportunity to be able to engage with NASA, take a piece of NASA history and legacy, and make it their own, I think is a really illuminating point for a lot of people that never even considered that was an option.
Yeah, and we're really trying to get out there as much as we can,
Yeah.
to break that, because we realize that may be like kind of a invisible barrier there, but we're trying to get out even at locally, just seeing who's out there looking for business opportunities, putting our information and brochures out there, talking to people wherever we can, even local libraries and things. So it's not hard to break through. You gotta find us, and we're small, so within NASA Tech Transfer, but we're trying to be more well known, being connected through organizations like yours.
Yeah, no, you're doing a good job. I mean, definitely being out in the community, and it carries weight when NASA shows up to an event. So thank you for coming to,
Yeah.
today. But also, I know for the participants, they were really excited to have your presence and understand, the possibilities. And I think it's also a great point too, because it offers it's not just inspirational, but it's aspirational, because for a lot of young folks that might not have a business yet but want to be entrepreneurs, they can start thinking about this now, and monitor where space is going, and then know that there are entities they can leverage that's already demystified, built the basic science so it's no longer hypothetical, and then take it and run with it for their own business.
Yeah, no kidding. And like in that, we were trying to, we're also getting into universities. So through your searches on our site, you might come across something called Technology Transfer University. And so that's a program that we run with universities across the country, and professors will kind of infuse NASA technologies into projects.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so students can build business cases off of different NASA technologies, and whether they want to, keep going with that after they graduate and actually form a business around that idea. That's kind of the idea of that, and we hope more and more of those people, the students, do that. They take the ideas, develop a plan and a product, and it's really great to see it. We were recently up at Embry-Riddle in Florida, and got to see a whole showcase of space technology applications for different uses. And so it's not just businesses and startups, but it's, it can be within student communities too. They form teams, they come up with an idea, they put a whole thing together. It's as if they are creating this business. And we have seen a lot of success out of that too, with students who do want to move forward with it. So it's a great starting point, and I think a really good introduction to NASA for them, and it kind of definitely a barrier.
Yeah, well, and to that point, it makes it a lot more practical, because
Right.
you're not working with something where that technologically isn't possible. It's been proven. Now you just need to figure out what to use, how to use it, and how to utilize it for other use cases.
Yeah. Yep.
That's really fun. Well, I appreciate you coming on today.
Yes.
I think it's a lot of really good information, and like I said, people are always thinking about how to better integrate into the space industry, and with NASA in particular. And so we really appreciate your time and attention, and also sharing the website where they can go and find out more information.
Yeah, anytime. I hope we can do more.
Oh, we will. This is just the beginning. Yeah, because we'll be back in Florida, as I mentioned to you, starting the actual cohorts in Broward County at the end of this month. So we're going to involve you and your team and get you out there to meet the entrepreneurs.
Great. We look forward to it.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And for our viewers, thank you so much for listening and participating today, and please stay tuned for future Vector conversations. Have a great day.
Thank you.